What perfectly true story of yours sounds like an outrageous lie? I once nearly killed my older brother with a spear. He and I were playing cowboys and Indians, and being the only one with a BB gun, he was by default the cowboy. I had about a 5-foot-long stick sharpened to a dull point on one end, and was the Indian. He walked up to me, summer in Georgia, where I had a pair of shorts between me and the Lord, and shot me point blank with that BB gun barrel full of sand, and then took off running. He went across the yard, turned right at the fence and continued running hard away from me. I didn't even think about the consequences, took the spear and made a javelin throw that an Olympian would be proud of, and hit him in the back of the neck at between 35 and 40 yards away. He faceplants with the spear standing upright like a proud flag I had planted on the moon, then the spear falls over. The tip of the spear went between two vertebrae in his neck. The spear fell because the tip broke off in his neck. I celebrated the victory, then walked over to see what remained. We ended up in the emergency room, where the doctors decided not to operate, but rather to let the spear point work its way out on its own. It took 25 years to completely do that. My punishment for this act was that I received a BB gun, figuring that the worst I could do with that was to put his eye out, but that at least we would be on level footing in combat. Child rearing in the 60s was a different thing, and having a big family, built-in spares, helped a lot. Smile. My house was broken into while I was asleep on the couch in the living room. I captured my would-be burglar with a battle axe replica that my roommate had on the wall. I made him call 911 on his own phone since I couldn't hold on to him and the axe and a phone at the same time. He tried to get away a few times. A very surprised 911 dispatcher sent the police, who eventually got there, arrested my prisoner, and thanked me for not chopping him up. So what did he say on the phone? Hey, I need to be taken into custody before I get chopped up with a battle axe. I received a car as a tip while working as a cocktail waitress. Without extra service. I found out he had overheard me talking to coworkers about not having a car and lining up rides. Also, I was trying to save money to go back to college, since I did poorly the quarter before. Yes, still on the quarter system, and my parents stopped footing the bill. He paid his tab with his two friends and left me a $50 tip. Note, this was over 15 years ago and the tip was almost the cost of the bill. The car was delivered to me at work the next day by his lawyer and I never saw the man again. At first I wouldn't accept it because I wondered his motives and what strings would be attached. The lawyer assured me it was just a kind gesture and his client wanted nothing in return other than that I return to school and finish my degree. Now it wasn't a fancy, flashy, brand new car, but it was still a car, only couple years old. Come to find out, the man owned quite a few car dealerships as well as all of the company. I will not name the area. I never tell this to people, because hell, I probably wouldn't believe it either. I almost choked to death trying to warm up a frog I had picked up. It was early spring and I found a small frog moving slowly along my parents' pond. I picked it up and cupped it in my hands and held it up in my hands to breathe warm air on it, and it jumped into my mouth. It lodged in my throat and I could feel it struggling as I horked it up. Frog in your throat? It was there long enough for me to imagine the questions my parents would have when they found my body. One time, someone accidentally shipped me $20,000 worth of boa constrictors. That was a very surprising day, lol. Edit, since so many people are asking, I figured I'd tell the story. I did buy a single boa, worth way less than $20,000, from this breeder, but he mixed up the shipping label with that of a gentleman who purchased a high-end breeding colony. There were 11 designer boas in the box, and they all made it safely to their intended recipient in the end. Smile. Now the boa I bought was almost killed by an idiot FedEx driver during the mix-up, but that's a different story. Edit 2. Okay, the gist of the second story is that despite having a guaranteed delivery time of before 10 a.m., the delivery guy left her in the back of his truck until near 6 p.m. on a 95-degree day. By the time we tracked him down, actually had to call them and intercept the driver, she was in bad shape. Ataxic, severely dehydrated. She couldn't hold her body up. The stress caused her to develop a respiratory infection, which took 2 months of injectable antibiotics to treat. Happily, she recovered fully and is doing well today. Came home late one night to find David Bowie laying on my bed watching Mary Tyler Moore on my small black and white TV. Owned an after-hours club in NYC, and my boyfriend met him and brought him home to hang out. A seagull once dropped a whole mackerel on my head. I smelled like dead fish all day. A seagull stole a hot dog right off my grill at the beach once. I tasted after it hollering and it shit in my mouth. I met a man who I can only describe as a face tattoo drug dealer, constantly dressed in all black on the psych ward, and would come in smelling of weed. Anyway, this sucker could just hold out his hand and birds would come to him. All kinds too, like chickadees, seagulls, and magpies. No food, no bait, nothing, just his open hand, and he could do it on command. He was like some sort of goth Disney princess. My stepdaughter acquired a guinea pig that, big surprise, turned out to be pregnant. She gave birth to 2 normal babies and a runt that was too weak to walk or drink milk from the mother. The little guy was on the way out, so I got my stepdaughter to hold the mother in a sort of sitting position while I squeezed some milk out of a nipple that was about the size of a decent pimple. I jammed the baby onto the nipple and he finally got the idea, drinking enough to kickstart his growth, while we held mom still for about 20 minutes. He lived and we eventually gave the 4 of them to someone else. Shortly after, a fox broke into their hutch and ate all of them except the runt. I beat an Olympic medalist at volleyball. I usually leave out the fact that she wasn't an Olympian for volleyball. I beat an Olympic medalist in curling. He was a speed skater. I bet you only won because all of the other curlers fell over at the last second. An internet conspiracy theorist implicated me in 9/11. Mr. President, we had no idea you were a Redditor. I watched a man with 2 peg legs walk up a harbor ramp at low tide. It was one of the singly most inspirational events I've witnessed. Edit: harbor ramps connect land to the docks, which move up and down on pilings as the tide changes. When the tide is out, the ramp is at a steep incline. At high tide, the ramp is nearly level with the land. This particular incident occurred on an abnormally low tide where the ramp was at a near 90-degree angle. I did not offer help, as clearly a man with 2 pegged legs is the captain of his own vessel. He achieved this great feat of human mastery by placing one peg in front of the other while using the railing as leverage and pure grit and determination for traction. He offered a level glance at me as I passed him on my way down, and the heavy rain motivated us forward without conversation. I've mentioned his story to people before, and invariably the response is either "I know of him" or "duck off, let's get whiskey drunk." Any more of his story that I know is lost to the walls of dingy fishing bars that were once saloons. Almost 20 years ago, my father sold his photo camera to buy some booze. He was an alcoholic and an abusive piece of shit, among other equally funny things. Inside the camera bag there was a piece of paper with a handmade aperture and shutter speed chart. I had drawn little circles in that paper when I was a child. Fast forward 15 years. There's a pawn shop near the place where I work, and from time to time I go there to see what hidden gems I can find. One day there was a camera that looked quite similar to the one my father sold. I bought it on a whim, without even checking if it worked properly. Just because it looked like the one he undersold. Once at home, I took a closer look, cleaned it properly and searched the bag. Yes, you know where this is going. There it was, the paper with the chart and my little circles in blue biro. I sat on the sofa for a moment just to let the WTF moment sink in. That camera is now in a place of honor among my other cameras. Edit: wow, this is my highest rated comment ever. Thank you very much. Edit 2, some of you asked for a pic of the camera. Here it is. Edit 3, English is not my first language, please don't look too close at my grammar and writing skills. I'm working on it. I have slipped on a banana peel that was on the street. This has happened to me too. I was very wary afterwards for any falling pianos. Don't forget the open manholes. There should seriously be a better word for the above. My dad tried to smuggle a diamond out of Sierra Leone, but the guys helping him get it through customs ran off with the diamond. Edit: wow, I didn't expect to get this kind of response. Here's the full story for those who want to know. So my dad was working for a company that works in mining in Africa. He went out to inspect how the Sierra Leone operation was running. While over there he bought a diamond off a local chief who worked with the company. He bought it for much lower than its actual worth, so decided not to declare at customs and try and smuggle it through. People at the company told him what to do: pay off one guard and give him the diamond. He would then meet another guard with the diamond beyond all the checks. The second guard never showed, and that's the story. My grandfather brought a sword to the office and tried to behead my dad for a poor quarterly performance. Family businesses are tough. My grandfather has Alzheimer's/dementia, not sure, Asian family in Asia, everyone denies mental issues, and before that incident, our family didn't know he was unraveling. Edit: yeah, this story is so incredible, that the whole family was in a dilemma about what to say to the doctors/lawyers/bankers/etc. When they needed to declare my grandfather was mentally unfit to make his own decisions. My dad was going, what do I tell them? My dad tried to kill me? With a sword? Who's going to believe this? I mean, even my dad thought the calls he got from his employees were part of a prank. Went to the office, got stopped by the freaked out security guards asking him what they should do, and finally realized it was for real. Everyone just hid and waited it out until my grandfather got tired of waiting and went home. It even took a few more crazy incidents before the entire family believed my dad. Most of his siblings thought it was an elaborate ploy to take over the company for the longest time, and it nearly turned into a crazy court case. A friend of mine told me about how he went to KFC and they ran out of chicken. The Church's around the corner was flooded and the guy in the back was like, did KFC run out of chicken again? Like this happens on some sort of regular basis. Moving interstate, all our belongings on the little trailer. Pulled over the side of the road so my soak could pee. Too close to the side of the road, and the trailer slid down a small ditch. Not enough to wreck the car but too steep for our little car to pull out. Next thing you know, a white minibus pulls up, and out jumps a half dozen guys who were a weightlifting team from I think Argentina. It was 25 years ago, not sure now. They lifted our trailer up onto the road, climbed back in their van, and drove off. I'm just imagining this happening without any words being said between any of you. One time as I was leaving the mall I balled up a piece of paper and flicked it at the trash can and hit a fly in mid-air. I met a guy on Xbox Live back when people were relatively new to it. Through a series of questions we discovered he was my neighbor, looked out the window and waved. Imagining this situation makes me crack up. The chances of that happening are pretty slim I imagine. Taylor Swift pushed me out of a swing when I was in 3rd grade. I used to go over to my neighbor's house to play just about every afternoon. He had an older sister and she just happened to be friends with the then unpopular Taylor Swift. I went over one day doing typical 1st grader things on the swing set with my neighbor when they came out. Taylor demanded that we get out and let her swing. Rebel me said no and she said fine then, I'll push you. The next thing I know I had a skinned up knee and a mouth full of dirt. I ended up going to the same middle school and high school as her and always heard about how great she is. To me, she'll always be that bitch that pushed me out of a swing. TLDR I refused to give up my swing to Taylor Swift so she shoved me out. Edit, after asking my parents and doing math, I was actually in 3rd grade at the time. Edit 2, I forgot to mention this but since she became famous she has contributed quite a few times to the community. One donation, coincidentally enough, was a playground. Link. Vanilla Ice left me a happy birthday voicemail. 15 years ago, I was friends with a guy who is a professional guitar tech and travels all over with different bands. He was in Miami with a fairly successful band, and Vanilla was at the show. Later, on the tour bus, my friend called me at like 3 a.m. to wish me happy birthday and handed the phone over to Vanilla Ice and he wished me happy birthday. Unfortunately, my service provider's voicemail system only allowed you to save a message for 7 days, and I couldn't figure out how to save it any other way, so it's disappeared into the ether. Spencer Horseman, the magician from America's Got Talent, lives in Baltimore and performs at a bar in the city. We went and saw him perform, he was great. After the show I had to use the bathroom and as I'm peeing, he comes in to pee as well. I go over and wash my hands and they have one of those hand blowers that is activated by hand motion. I say hey Spencer, check this trick out. I wave my hands in front of the blower and say abracadabra and it starts. I turn and say see, I can do magic as well. Guys started laughing hysterically. So, I captivated the guy who captivated 1,000 guys. Lived alone for a year when I was 8. TLDR first generation Asian immigrants, mom goes back to the motherland to renew US visa, gets stuck, I'm sent back ahead of time thinking it was going to be a couple-week delay, family friends helped me get settled back into a routine for school, weeks turned into months, months turned into a year, mom comes back to find me 40 PDS heavier cause 8-year-old me was eating 3 frozen dinners a night. Also almost burned down the house at least on 4 separate occasions, discovered unlimited amounts of porn, and my father was a piece of shit. My brother landed a golf ball on a coffee cup after it ricocheted off the clubhouse ceiling and a policeman's forehead. This happened when my older brother was around 15. He learned how to play golf from my dad, a gold geek, since young, and after a number of lessons, he became good enough to play a 9-hole course with dad and the adults. Now, at this hole, I can't remember what number, not a golf fan, He hit the ball too hard and sent it flying toward the clubhouse. Normally this would not be a problem since there was a net protecting the house from foreign, unwanted balls like this. However, there was a tiny hole in a section of the net and the ball went through it. After a couple of seconds, they heard people screaming from the clubhouse. Apparently, the ball went into the clubhouse, hit the ceiling 2 times, bounced off on forehead of a well-respected policeman, who was just resting after playing a course, and landed on a cup of coffee he was sipping. The impact was softened by the ricochet, but still enough to leave a bruise mark on his forehead. Needless to say, my father panicked and kept apologizing to the policeman. Fortunately, he was patient enough to see that this is no more than an epic coincidence. The story became the topic in the golf club for a couple of weeks though, and my brother did not play a game for months. I still think that my brother should have bought some lottery tickets that week with that kind of luck. When I was a little kid, I convinced a friend to restart Pokemon Blue and trade me a Squirtle, claiming he'd be able to just reload his previous save anyway. I knew full well he'd lose all his progress, but I wanted to catch them all. After we traded and he realized, crushed, that he'd lost everything, I told him he must have messed up somehow. Then, around 15 years later on Christmas Eve, I posted this story anonymously in a confessions-type thread on 4chan. He was in the thread. By insane coincidence, I got a chance to apologize for my misdeed as an adult. I would have screen-capped it for posterity, but I was a little nervous to keep records because he had to reveal a bunch of personal info to prove he knew me. Suffice to say, even the people in the thread didn't believe it wasn't just me acting both parts. Thanks for listening to another episode of Reddit X. Subscribe and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any stories. Feel free to share your own stories below in the comments. Have a good day.